attention. Thank you very much. Great to see you all here this evening. My name is Steve Daughtry and I'm the Archdeacon of the island, and it's my honour to chair this evening's meeting. Thank you to St Mary's PCC for allowing us to use their church. Joan, can I just hand over to you?
Yes, I just want to say how very nice it is to see so many of you here, and we are here to help and serve the community, so we're very chuffed. You need to know fire exits. We won't have a fire, but if we did, the big door at the back and the one in the Diaola Chapel at the side, not that one. I wouldn't want you to waste your time on that door. It doesn't open. One at the back, one over there. So enjoy the evening. I want to thank Steve for coming to chair this. It's going to be a wonderful evening, and all our candidates for coming as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joan. So just so that you know, the format of the evening is going to work like this. We will go on for no longer than 2 hours, and that 2 hours will be comprised of opening statements of 3 minutes by each of the 6 candidates, and then questions that have been pre-submitted will be given to each of the candidates in turn and in a rotational basis. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. They'll be given a warning after 90 seconds and a hard stop at 2 minutes, at 120 seconds. And if they go on more than that, it'll just be a gavel. Okay. Onto the block. We'll close with a final summing up of 2 minutes, and then the evening will finish. Hopefully, those of you that have been that want to have been given an exit poll voting slip for you to indicate just for a bit of fun at the end of this evening, and we'll let the candidates know the results. So, may I ask Joe if he would begin?
Are we not starting with a prayer?
Sally, we will start with a prayer. You've embarrassed the Archdeacon. What can I possibly say apart from yes to that? So let us, folks, if you would, let's pray together. Father God, we thank you for our democracy, for the opportunity for our voices to be heard respectfully and together. And we pray for our candidates, Lord God, that you would help them have clear views and answers to the questions that we ask. And we pray, Lord God, for your wisdom across our whole island and country as we seek to put the people that would best serve in Parliament. Amen. Amen. Joe.
Well, thank you, Steve. It's wonderful to be here. You may think, Steve, the exit poll is just a bit of fun, but it sounds terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I wanted to start by saying just a little bit about who I am, and then go on to say why I'm standing. So I work for a national nursing charity, and what we do is look to put more nurses in the community, helping people at home. And we do that up and down the country, and including here on the island. I'm also an Isle of Wight councillor, and I previously served as trustee for 2 local charities as well as a school governor. Now, I grew up just 2 miles from here in St Helens, and St Helens is still my home, where I live with my wife and 2 young children. So I'm looking for your support to be your next MP, because I want the island, my home, your home, to be an even better place to live, to work, to grow up. And it is all those things, but we can't take it for granted. So I've been out on the doorstep for months now, talking to residents all over the constituency, and just earlier this afternoon, we were out in Brading talking to residents on the Mall, on New Road, on Morton Road, to understand what matters to you most right now. And the 3 things that come through loud and clear are business and jobs and opportunities for working age people, improving community care, both healthcare and social care, and supporting local schools. They're certainly not the only things, but they come through loud and clear on the doorstep. And of course, they're all interconnected. So promoting business and jobs is also about improving our ferries, because there's nothing more challenging for businesses who want to invest in our island and create jobs for islanders than the cost and the logistical costs of our ferries. And on improving community care, both health and social care, in my view, we spend too much time thinking that only hospitals are the place people should go to see a nurse. Most people want to stay in their homes if they can, and at any one time, a quarter of beds at St Mary's are occupied by people who have no medical need to be there, but they have nowhere safe to return to, be it home or a care home.
15 seconds.
So I want to see us spending more money in community care. I'm hugely looking forward to all the questions tonight, and I know that hard cut-off gavel is about to come down right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael.
Thank you, and welcome. It's wonderful to be here. I was brought up on the island. I went to school. I went to Bembridge School, which I'm very actually proud of, and I was actually confirmed in your church in 1972. In fact, the Bishop of Portsmouth and I and my family were going onto the hovercraft that night. And I left something behind, and the Bishop of Portsmouth was very upset, and we missed the hovercraft by about 30 seconds. In those days, if you remember, the doors closed. That was a hovercraft that crashed. And I actually have I now have a letter from the Bishop of Portsmouth at the time, who's now the late, died some years ago, saying, "Thank you for saving my life." The story goes on, was I was actually put as missing, and then I went to the school on Sunday, chapel of Bembridge. They used to have that, very like Hogwarts it was, and they were doing a memorial for my death, because we were posted missing, and the headmaster said, "Lily, you're even late for your own funeral." I love this community, and I had to get off the island in 74. I did put leaflets in for a wonderful man who's my role model, and that was Stephen Ross, who I believe was one of the best MPs that this island ever had, and he was a Liberal, and I'm a Liberal. And I'm in that mould of him, because he taught me about real community politics. And when I came back, I was elected in the area of Elmfield. I've been there for 8 years, and I've represented my community. I was a mayor through of Ryde and the chair of the voluntary sector that actually supported the wonderful community through COVID, and actually built in Ryde a future that comes out of it. And I want to do this right across the bay and this community, because I passionately love it. I worked for 44 years in poor communities, helping people come from conflict as a specialist in post-traumatic stress. And I don't want our community to be stressed any further. I want to be an MP that listens. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And Emily, I'm going to hold.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, and welcome to everyone. I look forward to the debate going forward. I am somebody who brings a wealth of experience in terms of the voluntary and public services, managing post-16 education and employment services for blind and paralysis people across the UK, but also health and local government policy with public sector regulators. So I bring that experience to this role, but also my lived experience as a disabled person needing to break down barriers in seeking mainstream education, employment opportunities and daily living in terms of independence. And I will bring that tenacity to the role of Member of Parliament for Isle of Wight East if I should have the privilege to serve you. Some of my memories go back to childhood at a children's hospital where I had eye operation after eye operation. And my nan used to come at lunchtime with a small tub of ice cream and to read a latest chapter in my book. And that is why today I'm an avid reader and somewhat obsessed with ice cream. And of course there's a great choice around the island in that respect. But I also seek, as now an NHS governor, as a town councillor, to use that experience as a patient and as a citizen to represent people by engaging with people as I have done over the last couple of months in being selected for the Labour Party, to not only explain the policies of the Labour Party but to listen to your concerns and your aspirations, putting forward the case for a mission-driven Labour government around economic stability, about making Britain's streets safer, building an NHS fit for purpose, and seeking to make our country a clean energy superpower, as well as breaking down opportunities for everybody at all stages of their lives, increasing the life chances of islanders. That is what I seek to do, and I ask for your trust and your support, and I will deliver with hard, relentless work every day. Thank you.
Sarah.
Okay, I've got 3 minutes to tell you why you should vote for me. My name's Sarah. I was born on the island. Is it okay? Is it getting close to that one? I was born on the island in St Mary's. I grew up in Ryde, and I love the island. I love my island. I bought my local post office when I was 21, and the Strand Post Office in Ryde. And being there, I learned how much I actually really loved speaking to people and finding out what's wrong in their life, what's right in their lives, what they like, what they don't like. Post offices are just the hub of the community, and I feel that's... Sorry. Can you... Have I turned it off?
Could you use that one, please? Go through that one. Thank you.
This one? Yeah. Oh, is that better? Can I start again now? Okay, so I was born on the island and... No? Is it gone again? Hello? Is it me?
Testing, 1, 2.
Sarah, I'll start you again when you've got it sorted, right?
Okay.
Testing, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Doesn't feel like it's on. 1, 2, 1, 2. No. I'll keep going while you Testing. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Here we go. Excellent. Never touch anything. Okay. Sarah, do you want to begin again?
I'm not going to touch anything. Okay. So, my name's Sarah. I've got 3 minutes to start now. Right? Okay. I was born on the island. I love my island. I've been here all my life. Well, my 2 children have grown up here, and my daughter, she just went up to university. She decided to look for somewhere just like the Isle of Wight. We all love it here. So I grew up in Ryde, and at the age of 21 I bought my local post office. I was working for the lady there and she was selling, so I bought it. Now, spending time in the post office, I absolutely adored speaking to everybody that was coming in. You were the hub of the community. You would find out from people what was going wrong, what was going right, what they were worried about, all sorts of different things. It's such a shame that they've gone, obviously, because I do think it's the same with the banks in the high street. They seem to be stripping everything away, and all of these points of contact for people to come and find out and get some help and a little bit of support, it's such a shame. So from the post office scandal, obviously everybody's heard about that. I had first-hand experience of knowing exactly, you could see where what was going wrong. They outsourced things to Fujitsu, and it seems like that situation is happening across the board in our country. We're outsourcing within the NHS, we're outsourcing with schools, and the people that are coming in to then provide the services, they don't work properly. And we all know what's wrong in the country. No one's got a dentist. The ferries, I suppose on the island, the ferries are too expensive. You can't get a doctor's appointment. And it seems I'm standing because there was no one that I could vote for. No one seemed to have any answers. They would point the blame and hope and say, oh, well, they've done this and they've done that and we can't do anything. Reform UK really have a bright vision for the country. It feels like there's something positive that we can actually grab hold of. They have fully costed plans of how to get money in to pay for all of the things they want to pay for without taxing us any further. We're taxed on everything. It's wrong. We need more money in our pocket of our own to spend how we want. I want less reliance on the state. We can't keep asking for handouts and being reliant on other people. It takes away people's independence and their self-worth. You need to make work pay. Make sure that we can get a dentist appointment and a doctor's appointment. Make sure that our kids are safe in school, on the streets. Make sure that crime is taken down. At the moment, you can go and shoplift £200 worth of goods and you don't get prosecuted for it. What kind of example is that setting to anybody else in the country to commit a crime? We need to crack down on, I like the New York approach, we crack down on broken windows and then it stops the other crimes happening. So I think we need more autonomy, more freedom. Reform will give that to you by having more money in your own pocket. And it is a positive vision, and that's why I'm standing for reform.
David.
Hi, hello everybody. I'm David Glucock. I'm independent, so I've got nobody to answer to, only you. The people who vote for me, I will answer to you, and I promise that. A little bit about myself. My family moved down here in 1966, bought a hotel in Ventnor, which I own now as a guest house. I've seen all sorts of changes in the tourism industry, some of it good, some of it not so good. The island certainly is very important to me. I believe it's one of the best destinations in the country, and I've always supported the vision of Isle of Wight tourism. When I was 9, obviously I went to school in Ventnor, the secondary school. Unfortunately, I was mixed up in the changeover from the grammar school system to the comprehensive system. My schooling was completely ruined in that. They tend to make these decisions and it's the children who suffer. So from Sandown High School, I then went to Isle of Wight College and learned my trade as a chef. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And what I do, I get involved in the local community. I became chairman of Ventnor Hoteliers. From that, I began to work my way up, and I headed the tourism members industry for 10 years. And I locked horns with the council several times. I'm still locking horns with the council. As you probably know, my mantra is get island roads moving, and I guess that's to all of our hearts. There's not many roads that we can use, lots of them are closed. We think that is totally outrageous, and it's time that the council were accountable to us. So that's my mantra. I've got obviously other things I need to say, and they will all come out when you answer your questions, when I answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Vix.
Thank you. I'm going to try and stand up this bit. Do the best I can. Lovely to be here. This is our third church of the campaign, but it's not going to be our last. I'm standing for the Green Party from the island for the 4th time. Now that's due to the, frankly, chaos that we've had in the last 10 years, with elections every couple of years. I joined the party in 2014 after I was studying science at the Open University, and through that I realised that the climate crisis and the energy crisis was the biggest thing that we needed to make political leadership on. But in my daytime, I'm a teacher, I'm a parent, I'm a community councillor, and I'm the national spokesperson for education for the Green Party. Since I stood for election in 2015, the Green Party vote on the island has grown exponentially from 900 to 9,500 votes and even further than that. It's now the third highest Green Party vote in the entire United Kingdom after Brighton and Bristol. You might be interested though in my faith background, because we are in a Churches Together Hustings. I grew up the daughter of an atheist father, a lapsed Anglican, and a Methodist mother, and I went to chapel every Sunday, and I ended up writing the nativity plays and playing the organ in church. I was even Charles Wesley in one production where a gentleman gave me a £1 coin, which I still remember to this day. I went to school at a Catholic school for 7 years, and I did A-level theology. So churches are really important to me, even though I've decided to make my progress through political views and sharing those views. So what are those views? I think the Green Party views are a belief in stewardship and inequality, and not only for the environment, but also for the most vulnerable people in society, at home and abroad. We believe in compassion. We believe in sharing the burden and the wealth of society. And as Thomas Rainsborough said in 1647, I teach Stuart history, the poorest he had the life to live as the greatest he. Now I'm standing for election, but I cannot do this by myself. I know I've got a great team of Greens on the island, and I know very well the MP candidates, the leaders that we have for the Green Party on the mainland, but without the support and the positivity of all the islanders I'm meeting, I cannot do this, and I'm standing here to win. The new constituency, I believe, is wide open, and I think any one of us that are sat here tonight could win. And I hope tonight that I can convince you that I am deserving of the increased support that I'm getting, and that we can bring real hope and real change to Isle of Wight East. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Thank you to all of you. You are so brilliant on your timings. So now we're just going to go through as many questions as we can squeeze in. If the candidates are brief, we'll get more questions in. If they take their proper and allotted time, we'll probably end up with about 7 or 8 questions. So Andrew Larpent is going to kick us off with the first question. Andrew, if you would come to the lectern over there. And Michael, you will be the first to respond.
Thank you. Firstly, thank you all for standing. My question explores your motivation. Because we learned this weekend that trust in politics and politicians is at an all-time low in this country. So my view is that being an MP in the 2020s has to be one of the most exposed and thankless jobs in the country. Why on earth are you standing?
A very good question. In fact, when I read it, I went, oh, that's a difficult one. The comedian Groucho Marx, not the Marxists, not Carl, said, I don't want to join a club that will make me a member. And I suppose that's how I felt. And I suppose after working for 44 years, being a councillor the last 10, I'm not going to give away my age, right? But I was 16 in 1974 when Stephen Ross won. You know why? I was a mental health professional. I worked all my life with people that were in distress. And why am I doing this? It's a very good question. It's because it's in my DNA to help others. Today I went to the Spar shop and to buy a newspaper. The Guardian had gone, so I had to have the eye. And I spoke to the lady behind the till and said, she looked very down. I said, are you all right? You didn't look down. And she said, my home for 10 years, the flat, the landlord is selling it, and I have got 2 months to get out, and I've got nowhere to live. I said, well, okay, here's my email and telephone number. Contact me at the end of the day when you finish your shift, and I will help you. I did that automatically because that's what I've done in my life. I once brought a tramp home when I was 8, which wasn't probably a thing to do, and my grandmother had to explain, or granny really. But I really do passionately help people, and that's what I want to give back to this community, which I love. Thank you.
And Emily, over to you.
Thank you. I mentioned earlier my experience as a child losing sight. Hospital, eye operation after eye operation. When I was about 9, my specialist at the Children's Hospital couldn't do any more and wanted specialist advice from Moorfields Eye Hospital in London. This was in the early 70s, and I was from a working class family, and my parents couldn't afford to take me until the striking workers on Vauxhall picket line clubbed together so that I could go to London and get the consultation. Unfortunately, there wasn't anything the consultants could do, and we came back early, and instead of giving back the money that was unspent, the workers said that I should use it for a purpose to adjust to my blindness, which was buying a Perkins Braille machine, which I still use 50 years later to make notes about labour values and putting them into action. 50 years later, I am an NHS governor for that very hospital, Moorfields, leading for the council for a new hospital to bring together clinical excellence and world-class research and education. Because the solidarity that I found as a child is something that I want to put back to my community, both at national level, but also here on the Isle of Wight, to represent good public service. And that is my driving force, to break down barriers for other disabled people and open up opportunities.
Thank you, Emily. Sarah.
Okay, so your question, why? Why on earth? Because you put your head above the parapet and you get names flung at you, you get all sorts of attention that you really don't want, and yeah, it's going to be horrendous. I'm sure it's going to be horrendous. But it's also going to be amazing because I will get results. I know I will get results because I will not stop until I get them. The only reason I'm standing is because there was no one that I could have voted for. I can't vote Conservative for what they've been doing. I can't vote Labour, they're not Labour anymore. I can't vote Green because I've got a diesel car and a gas boiler, and in my heart I cannot scrap them until they're broken. I'm not ripping them out. I'm sorry, there's Lib Dem, sorry, I know in your heart you're a really nice guy, but it's just Reform are the only party that feel like that something's going to change, something's going to be different. And I thought, well, why not? So I put myself forward, I was interviewed, went through, and I've been getting an amazing response. People really feel like we want something new. So I'm really pleased I've done it. I'm sure there'll be points where I really regret it, but I think it's going to be amazing. If I get voted in. So thank you.
Sarah, please.
Well, the conversation went like this. We had a meeting of the Keep Ventnor Moving Group, and the election had been called the day before the meeting, and we just decided that we'd have a petition and to make our voice stronger, to show the dissatisfaction we got in the town, the way the council were treating us. So I've got an idea. I said, why doesn't one of us stand as MP for Parliament? And they said, yeah, that's a great idea. You. And I thought, oh, great, thanks very much. But, you know, it's funny, actually, going down this road, I'm actually quite enjoying it, because I like talking to people. I love the hustings. I love that interaction between people asking me questions, me looking at the answers. I'm not a politician. I can be honest. And like Sarah, I hadn't a clue who I was going to vote for. Bob Seeley talked to me a few weeks ago. He said, oh, the election might come up. Who would you vote for? I said, well, Bob, sorry, the Conservatives have let me down badly. It won't be Conservative. Do you know, Bob, I might stand myself as the monster raving loony party. This was a few weeks ago, and we laughed. and here I am. So, not amongst the raving loony party, but an independent who will work for you. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Vix.
Thank you. This really is the best question ever. And I think I need to say again, Sarah, I have a car, I have a gas boiler, I'm like everybody here, I'm struggling in which to pay for those bills, and that's why I'm standing, that's another reason. It's not something I've always wanted to do. In fact, I accidentally stood as a bucket list thing to do in 2015, and now I'm here, and I'm still here. I think that's due to a sense of duty. As tough as it might be for me, and yes, I have had newspaper articles, not just in the county press, but in the Daily Mail and in Guido Fawkes written about me. And as tough as that is, it's not as tough as it is for people who cannot get a roof over their head, who cannot get a dentist, who don't know where to make ends meet. It's really important. I was on the Sunday Politics show a couple of weeks ago, and I was meeting these new candidates. One was a vet, one was a barrister, one was working in overseas development. And it made me believe that actually, those of us who are standing for, not being elected before, we're going to make a difference by making a whole brand new parliament full of new people who are going to be able to represent our country. Public service, community leadership, somebody's got to do it. Now, if I can manage to keep my calm in a classroom full of 14-year-old kids, I'm sure I will manage to cope with the House of Commons.
Thank you, Vix. So the second question is being... Sorry, Joe, I'm so sorry. Try that.
Andrew, yeah, it's a really, really tough job. But so it should be. Because it's a great honour and a great privilege, and there's a lot of influence that comes with the role of being an MP. So it should be a tough job. And what motivates me, and always has done since my days at school when I was elected as one of the first regional youth members of Parliament for the island by island school children, what motivates me is when I see decisions that could be made better, when I see things going wrong, and if only there was more collaboration between decision makers, be that national politicians or the council, and local residents and businesses, if only we could get people together, we could make better decisions. That motivates me. I think what motivates me possibly even more, and I think it's a particular problem on the island, is lack of decisions. There are too many decisions that just don't get made. And as an Isle of Wight councillor, I've seen some of the mechanisms of that on the inside. Now, an MP doesn't have technical decision-making powers in their constituency. They're a national representative. But they do have a lot of influence. And they do have a lot of influence and ability to help make decision-makers consult, listen, and take us forward. And I'll give just one small example. It's not the best example, but it's nonetheless a good example. Flooding. So we've seen in Monkton Mead, in Ryde, we've seen here at Nicholas Close in Brading and the Morecambe Common, flooding, where the blame after the event gets passed from the council to the Environment Agency, to Island Roads, to Southern Water, to landowners where relevant, and all the way back again. Promises get made, and a couple of years later, it happens all over again. That is an ideal situation where an MP can bring those parties together, bang heads, and ensure that people never get flooded out of their home again.
Thank you, Joe. So our second question is from Maureen Jones.
Good evening. We have quite a lot of new houses being built on the Isle of Wight. However, there are few that are affordable for Isle of Wight families, or even fewer built for social housing available for rent. Do the candidates consider social and low-cost housing a priority? And if so, how would their party address this and fund it?
Thank you, Maureen. Emily, would you answer that question first?
Yes, thank you very much. Joe makes a good point about poor decisions. We've had 14 years of poor decisions, and that's why it's time for change. On housing, we have a situation on the island where 2,400 roughly people are in temporary accommodation, and they are in need of permanent accommodation, not the temporary bed and breakfasts and other types of accommodation that they're in. That is costing the Isle of Wight Council significantly, and indeed gone up by about £500,000 in the last 2 years. So reform is needed. We need more investment in social housing, in affordable housing, and that would help to reduce the immediate sort of temporary accommodation needs that is being forked out in housing benefits and indeed the costs of the Isle of Wight Council. Labour will bring about reform with looking at the planning system, so we build 1.5 million houses in the next Parliament. We want to unlock developments for builders and to stop the blocking. We want to assist people in terms of a mortgage guarantee to help them on the home ownership ladder. We need to shift also from leaseholds to common holds, so people who are renting have more rights to alter reasonably their accommodation for their particular needs. There is a need for a renters' charter to enable people to live comfortably in their own private homes. We need change, and that hasn't happened over the last 14 years with the Conservatives. Labour will deliver it.
Thank you, Emily. Sarah?
Okay, there are a few different points to this. There's a few different things, so if I skip around. When you go to build a property, it's just as cost effective, actually more cost effective, to build a 4-bed house than it is to build a 1 or a 2. Now, Reform UK understand this. I don't know if any of the other ones really do. I know how much building materials cost and how much labour costs and that kind of thing. We need to give tax incentives for builders to build reasonable sized houses, smaller houses. The other point is that the banks won't lend to somebody. They pay £1,200 in rent every single month, but they will not lend to them so that they can get a mortgage. So even if these properties are being built, we need to make sure that the financial support is there, and the banks will lend to young couples without deposits maybe to make sure that they can actually buy and have their own homes. I know the lady who works at the homeless section within the council. There is a huge list of people waiting. And it's partly as well because landlords have been taken into the 40p tax bracket. Now, they have to pay 40% tax before any other costs come out, their mortgage costs or their estate agent costs. All that's doing is pushing landlords out of the market. And less rental stock means the prices then are going to go up. Now, Reform UK understand that as well. And we're going to make sure that those people aren't paying. We've dragged a lot of people into the 40p tax bracket, staff nurses, for example, and that's just not right. So there needs to be some reform of the tax system. People need to be able to feel like they belong in their own home, and I believe that is people should be entitled to be able to buy. We've got overlanders coming over from the mainland, which are moving out of their towns and cities, possibly because people are moving into those, but obviously on the island, then we struggle to have homes for our own children. And obviously, it's all linked. Reform UK have got a plan for stopping too many people coming into the country, and I do think it does, much as we don't get it directly here, yeah, we do inevitably with overlanders.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, this one is very close to my heart. I know somebody at the moment who is in rented accommodation. The landlord has given her notice that he's selling the property. To be honest, she'd be glad to get out of it because it's full of mould. She's got a young baby who suffers chronically with chest complaints because of the fungus that the mould's producing. This is all up and down the country, but it's quite acute on the island because a lot of Victorian houses do have this problem. That actually is a newer property that is suffering from that particular problem. What I do believe that a lot of young people and actual people in rented accommodation can't get mortgages because there's no way that they will get a mortgage with the high interest rates. So I think, like the bounce back loan in COVID, the government could actually guarantee loans for the young people to get on the housing ladder. I don't think that's very difficult. So that's something that I would be looking at. Also, I think high interest rates have put a lot of landlords, well actually that's why a lot of them are getting out of that market. So we do need new builds. New builds only for local people. A lot of them do become second homes, and I don't think that's right because that actually affects my business because a lot of them then turn into Airbnbs. So yes, the whole needs reforming, and I certainly will be looking at that if I get elected.
Thanks.
We've heard people talking about affordable homes and social homes, and that's all very laudable, but I think what we really need to start doing is building council homes again. And it's in the Green Party manifesto to do that, obviously with a Green government, which what you'll be electing here is somebody to push the next government in order to do that, to join a group of Green MPs to do that. The aim is for 150,000 council homes, the level of security that you get with a council home. In terms of rental, the rental system needs to be able to promote and to provide that security for people living in their homes, that they will not be evicted with no fault due to their own. We also have, as you're saying, a lot of empty homes on the island. There's 3,000 homes on the island which are not in use at any one time. That's 1 in 20 homes. Legislation, and you're electing somebody to enact legislation. Legislation is what needs to be done in order to give councils the ability to build new homes and also to be able to take those homes back in. Last week I went to visit a small housing project, a potential one with Aspire in Ryde, and I went above their shop to look at their plans and see for myself what they're planning to do to build units there for people to be able to live. The cost of those units for the people living there will be their housing benefit. The idea is that they will be able to live with that security, that they will at least have a roof over their head. But we shouldn't have to leave it to charities and small projects like Aspire. We need to push the next, and it will be, a Labour government to be able to put those national leadership in order to be able to make sure we've got council houses, social housing and a roof over everybody's head.
Thank you, Vix. So the third question. Thank you. Sorry, Joe.
No, that's fine, Steve. You've got Michael this time as well. I want to see more affordable homes delivered on the island, and that's why I voted against the island planning strategy that came before the council just a couple of months ago, because I don't think it's a plan to deliver affordable homes. It has too much greenfield allocation on the outskirts of some of our villages that is prime housing for second homeowners, like in Freshwater and like in Bembridge. And what we're seeing now is some of those houses and adjacent land in Bembridge being built, and they're now being marketed. 4-bedroom house for £950,000. That is not affordable, yet nearly 200 more of those homes are allocated in the island planning strategy. And once again, I don't think the council is doing enough. I would like to see more social homes being built by social housing providers. I met with one of them last year, and the chief executive said the problem is engaging with the council. We have got some money to spend on it. The council have got some land, but every time we have a meeting with them, the goalposts change. If I was your MP, I would then be in a position to sit down with the chief executive of the council, because I think it needs that level of seniority, and housing providers, and say, this is not good enough. And if it doesn't change, I will have to engage with residents and explain why. We put £40 million into the council's budget for borrowing, cheap borrowing by the council to deliver homes 2 years ago. They haven't touched a single penny piece of it and have no plan to spend it. I will be the MP to motivate them to do it.
I have probably been the most prolific of all the councillors that have questioned planning on the island. And I did actually finally sign the island plan, because if we didn't have a draft island plan, particularly if we have a new Labour government, as seems to be predicted, we would be absolutely stuffed. That plan actually, not perfect, but it actually starts to have the vision of having community-led development. I've always wanted very much town and parish councils and the community to work with different providers and developers in designing the housing that is actually needed. 83% of private rented accommodation post-COVID has gone in Ryde. I gave you an example of the speech of going to the spa of someone who hasn't got accommodation. I have seen families the children go to a local primary school that have mould on their walls and clothes, and the school has asked me to raise money for a washing machine. We have an appalling situation, and we've got to focus on social housing. I would actually say council housing, and we do that by working with people like Vectors Housing and other housing associations that are with the proper financial support. And it doesn't have to be necessarily the government, it can be from banks like Unity Bank, Charity Bank, Triodos Bank, the Green Bank, to actually build those houses. Thank you.
Now we move to the third question, and Charity Garnett is going to ask it.
Good evening. Nationally, over 1 million children are living in poverty. According to the Office of National Statistics, on the island in 2021-22, there were 8,379 children living in poverty. 89% of those children are living in working families. Is that acceptable to you? And if not, what would you do about it?
Thank you, Charity. Sarah?
Okay, absolutely not acceptable at all. So, in this country at the moment, we've got a tax threshold of just under £30,000. Reform UK would up that to £20,000. You would pay any tax, take 7 million people out of paying tax, including pensioners that have got a small private pension, so you'd be better off too. But what that does is put more money in parents' pockets, and it gives them more independence. At the moment, the government is handing out vouchers for childcare. They're making you more dependent on the state with universal credit and all of this kind of thing. But we don't want vouchers and we don't want handouts. We want our own money in our own pocket, how we can spend it how we want to. Now, one of the biggest costs that we've got at the moment is food, probably, and also rent, which we've just touched on, but it's also our energy bills. Now, Reform UK would scrap the VAT on energy bills, so that's 20% off straight away. And also, we would scrap net zero in the meantime, because that is what's putting our bills up. In some cases, it could be up to 50% because of the subsidies that are being paid. Now, that money is in then your own pocket to be able to do with what you want. The mould and the damp could be an issue because people are keeping the windows closed, drying their clothes indoors on radiators, they're not putting the heating on and open the windows because it's just too expensive. We need, at the moment, to keep everyone healthy in this country, we need to make sure that we carry on using fossil fuels for a little while because it's just, we haven't got the right options at the moment, it's too expensive. So to keep children out of poverty, definitely more money in the parents' pockets, and Reform UK have a plan to do that.
David.
Well, we're almost back to Dickensian times, aren't we? We'll have mudlarks next on the beach, won't we? It's totally unacceptable. There should not be child poverty in this day and age. There really shouldn't. So I think I would actually support the tax going up to 20% before people pay it, because that does take a lot of people out of the tax bracket, so that does put more money into their pockets. That I would support. I think that's a good idea. I would increase the minimum wage so people actually earn more, so that was certainly something that I would pursue. And we need to get out of this ridiculous state that we're in today. Food banks, I never thought I'd live to see food banks, and they actually perform a vital service. We shouldn't have to have that vital service. It's everybody's right not to use it, but unfortunately there's more and more and more people using these very, very valuable resources. And I take my hat off to these volunteers that do all that work. They shouldn't have to do it, they do it, and it needs to change. And as an independent, I would certainly make sure that whoever came up with the right ideas, I would support.
Thank you, David. Vix.
Thank you for that question. In fact, since then, so I'm holding this here, it's actually gone up. The most recent figures, which came out from the Child Poverty Action Group, there's now 8,656 young people on the island, aged under 16, that are living in poverty. That's 35.9%. It's a rise of 6% in the last 10 years. It's really serious for us here. Poverty limits lives. It's a matter for all of us to deal with it. And yes, it impacts particularly on working families, but also families of more than 2 children. And the Conservative government introduced a cap on the amount of benefits that you can get if you have more than 2 children. And because of that, there are now 2 million children that this applies to. 2 million children who are suffering poverty because they have an extra sibling. Now, it will cost money to end that, and it is the Green Party policy to end that 2-child benefit cap. But the amount of money that you would reap back, it would be a good start in life that you could give those young people. So I would say end that 2-child benefit cap, and I hope that the Labour Party and the Conservative Party would do that. Also wages. Wages are not enough. It's not enough hourly rate. If we have people in poverty with working parents, there is something wrong with that system, and we need to raise the minimum wage. As a teacher, I see this every day. I see people coming in, young people coming into school who are hungry, who are cold, who don't have the right equipment. There are other things we can do, making sure that every kid who goes to school has a free school meal as well. As your MP, it would be a key priority for me because it's something that I see all the time and we need to make sure it ends.
Joe.
Well, obviously I agree, Charity. There are far too many children living in poverty because no child should grow up in poverty. And the economy has taken a beating over the last few years, and that reason alone has contributed to more children growing up in poverty. But I think we have a particular problem on the island, and you make a good point about children growing up in working families still in poverty. And I think our problem on the island is this: we have too many seasonal jobs as a percentage, and we have too many part-time jobs. So it's very hard to earn a living and provide for your family. And that's why I want to, and I said it at the beginning when I opened, promote business and jobs and ensure opportunities come to the island, because there is a sense, and there's a sense because it's right, that there are more opportunities that side of the water, and it's easier to find a good job that side of the water. And it shouldn't be. We should be able to attract businesses to come to the island and invest and create jobs. Those businesses that are already here, and I launched my campaign at one of them, who wants to bring more of their workforce to the island. They want to employ locally, but the ferries present a huge logistical cost challenge for them to do that. So everything is interconnected, And my way of tackling child poverty on the Isle of Wight is to grow business and jobs and ensure we have better paid, permanent, non-seasonal based work on the island so that everyone can provide for their family.
Well done.
Thank you. I find that difficult to follow, Joe, really, because more and more families are not just in poverty, they're in destitution. They've actually seriously had difficulty getting through the day. One of the things that I've campaigned on this issue for 9 years. Every year I flip, I won't use the word toss, but I flip pancakes to actually raise this issue, and I bring a motion to the Isle of Wight Council about this issue, and every year I ask, where is the figure of child poverty and where it should be? And it absolutely, Vix is right, it's just gone up. I've now got a commitment from the Isle of Wight Council to actually write a proper anti-poverty strategy. It's taken me that long to get that actually recognised. And that has been through huge campaigning of projects like Aspire and a range of the voluntary sector and the churches in getting this issue on the agenda in our community. Because I remember a former Conservative MP, when I said there's an issue of child poverty, he says, no, we're a wealthy island, there isn't. That is not the case. And we have to argue and get resources to resolve this issue. And it's through community development. And one of the things that I did in Ryde was got funding for establishment of a very good youth service, award-winning youth service, Network Ryde, and a community development worker who's now working through schools with those poor communities. It's not just about strategies and big words, it's about us doing something about it now, and that's what I've been doing for 9 years.
Thank you, Michael. Emily?
Yes, I agree, Charity. It's a tough place for many families here on the island. And Joe mentions rightly that the economy's been hammered. Indeed, it's been trashed by 14 years of the Conservative government. That's why we need change. That's why children need change. Labour, when we were last in administration, one of the key things we brought in was Sure Stop, a developing childcare system. We need to do that, invest in that far more to give it more capacity so parents have better opportunities to go out to work. We will reform things like the care sector so that people working there have a fairer deal. We need to bring up not just the minimum wage, but the living wage too. I despair when I see some of the figures about the increases in food on a weekly basis for families, £18 more in the last 2 years. The increasing energy bill, £777 for the average house in the last 2 years in the southeast, those figures. It's really tough for working families. And that's why we are in the situation. And we never saw this in the 1980s under Margaret Thatcher, but we do under the last 14 years, a situation where we have food banks. I want an island, a Britain in fact, that doesn't need food banks. They're providing a great service, but really in the 2020s, is that really what we want to be as a society? We can do better. Labour will do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Andrew Howe, would you pose the fourth question, please?
investing in the care sector would save the NHS an awful lot of money, probably millions of pounds. But the care sector is woefully underfunded, woefully understaffed, and the staff are very badly paid. What do you propose to do about the care sector?
Thank you, Andrew.
It's all interconnected, isn't it? I mean, you know, it really starts with the GP that you can't see. You go into hospital, you stay in hospital because there's no beds. They can't get the patients out because there's no care homes. And I guess this is where we're looking at, really, isn't it? It's the lack of care homes. We've lost so many care homes on the island now that it's a job to find a bed for anybody who actually does go from hospital. And what they're actually doing now is releasing patients back home when they actually should be in a care home or actually in hospital. So we have to look at this. We have to reinvest into the whole NHS. We have to look from the bottom to the top, shake it all up, get all the staff involved in it, the people on the coalface, up to the people on the top, to talk together. And I think this needs to happen soon after the general election, an all-party committee to get together to have a good look at why we've come to this situation where we're losing care services. They are woefully underpaid. We know that. It's a minimum wage, which is about £11.60 an hour. And then some of them have to pay for their own travel expenses on top of that. That cannot be right. They all should be paid at least far more than that because they're worth it. They're valuable people and we need to look after them. So yes, the whole lot needs shaking up.
There are a huge number of vacancies. I think the last count was about 150,000 vacancies in the care sector. But actually, even more important, as far as I'm concerned, are the 4.7 million unpaid carers that we have in this country who are doing it because they have to. They're doing it out of love, and they are vastly overlooked by successive governments there. When it comes to carers allowance, the Green Party policy is to increase that by 10%. But when it comes to filling those staff vacancies, I find the talk of we don't want any more immigrants coming over here quite difficult to stomach, because a lot of those people that work in our care homes and our caring professions have come here to earn their money in our caring sector and brought their skills. In fact, I prefer it if our education system valued those skills of caring, which at the moment is very much about reading, writing and arithmetic, and they're very important, and I teach. But we really need to look at those skills which are not going to be replaced by artificial intelligence, and which bring our community together, and caring is a really important part of that. And I'd like to see the school curriculum change to reflect that. We hear that this election is going to be the immigration election, or it's going to be the climate election, and both those things are important. But personally, I think this election should be the NHS election, because we are at a crossroads in the way our NHS is funded, in the way our NHS has had such a lot of lack of investment. So I'd like to see this be the NHS election and fix the broken care system.
So I work for a health and social care charity, a charity that works in and around health and social care to deal with this very issue of lack of support for people at home or in care homes, whether it's a healthcare need or a care need. The problem we have in this country is the structural difference in the funding. So of course healthcare is free and it's through the NHS, whereas social care is means tested and paid for by local authorities. And what that tends to mean, and this is my own career experience, is that the NHS are just looking out for healthcare and needs largely of people in hospital, but not exclusively, and councils are then left to pick up discharges from hospitals where individuals may no longer technically have a medical need, but they cannot look after themselves, or invariably the loved one they live with, maybe a husband or wife, is struggling to look after them. And I think we have a societal issue, and it's not a party political issue, it goes over decades, of not understanding living with frailty as a society. When the NHS was set up, frailty, long-term frailty, wasn't a feature of our society. People didn't live as long. And I think successive governments of all parties are struggling to catch up with how do you support people at home. So the biggest care need for someone living at home is the needs of the loved one looking after them for free. If you can give that free carer, husband, wife, son, daughter, mother or father, the support they need, then the need of the person living with a long-term condition is also better provided for. So it's that holistic, wraparound, at-home care, and I think the NHS can do more about this, and that's why the charity I work for try and get NHS nurses working in people's homes.
One of the things I would do as an MP is campaign and stop pursuing unpaid carers for old overpayments of carers allowance. Because we actually have that on the island. Isn't that you're £1 over and you then got to pay all the money back? That is disgraceful, and that is what the Conservative government is doing at the moment. It was Carers Week last week, and we needed to, celebrate the unpaid carers that actually keep their loved ones from going into hospital and then caring for them when they come out. And we do need to actually focus on really supporting the voluntary sector and the unpaid carers. I know we need to get government funding and things. We have 1,500 charities on this island, and if they didn't exist, we have one major one, Mountbatten Hospice. You raise 7 million a year to actually provide that, and only the government and NHS put in 3 million. This year they decided not to give an uplift by 10%. I am chair, or up until a few weeks ago, was chair of the policy and scrutiny of health on this, and I brought the NHS, the ICB, Integrated Care Board, in front of that committee to actually say, why aren't you giving that uplift? And we need to make sure that we get proper funding from future government to build, to support the infrastructure that actually will help the NHS. Thank you.
Emily?
As a disabled person who has worked in the disabled people's movement for the last 40 plus years, independent living has been a crucial issue that I have found that has been dodged time and time again, particularly with the Dilnot review in 2010 that's not been implemented or looked at seriously. And as a disabled person, I know the value, the importance of living independently and how vital that is. That's why Labour will have a policy of putting home first at the centre of our work. We will develop a national care service alongside the NHS, not a new bureaucracy, but different ways of working. But before we do that, we'll have in our first 100 years a new fair pay deal for people working in the care sector, so it is more attractive, so that we can deal with the gaps that we have in the workforce. That is essential. It is shocking that between 2015 and 2022, 4% of state support has gone down in terms of 4% of recipients, but the requests have gone up by 11%. Need is growing as we get an ageing population. It is particularly a factor for Ireland, where we have an ageing population and many with that have disability. So home first, and very much investing in new technology so people can live at home independently. But really, Labour will grasp that nettle with a national care service.
Thank you very much.
Okay, NHS, I've got a lot to say on this one. My daughter Shannon spent last summer and over Christmas earning money as a care worker, so I know exactly how hard this is, how little she was paid, how the agencies make her work so many hours, first thing in the morning, 12 o'clock at night, a couple of hours off in the daytime. The people that she was looking after, she absolutely adored, and actually she's still going back to see some of them now when she's got a different job. However, I know how hard it is. Upping the tax threshold up to £20,000 would put more money in their own pockets. It would make it slightly more worthwhile because it is actually more of a vocation. You don't do it just for the money. You just said about the shortage of the carers in care homes. We actually sacked 40,000 not that long ago, so that probably didn't help. But to encourage more into the sector, we need to make sure that it actually pays to work. So a lot of people are trapped on, we mentioned part-time employment just a minute ago. I think it's partly because the way the system is set up at the moment, you're better off if you're working 16 hours, 18 hours, and I do think that's where quite a lot of these problems happen, and carers, they're working all the hours, but the tax, they get it taken off of them. So at the NHS, it doesn't work. So people end up, let's say, staying, they can't get an appointment. Now, part of the reason is because doctors and surgeons have got their pension pots capped. Now, I don't care how wealthy they are in retirement. I don't care how much money they put in their pension pot. I just want an appointment. If you release those pension caps and let them put more money in, they're going to do more appointments. To encourage more people to go into medicine, we need to lift the cap on medical students going to university. When they've worked then within the NHS for 10 years, their student loan gets wiped. All other students shouldn't be paying any interest on their student loan anyway. It would be zero under us. And to pay for all of this, we would save 50 billion a year, 50 billion, just by saving £5 in every 100. I spoke to a nurse earlier on. She said the wastage is there, easy to see. She throws away a pair of scissors every time she sees someone.
Thank you. So the fifth question is from Raymond Simmons.
Good evening. I'm sure that everybody here has witnessed the extensive pumping of sewage onto our beaches over the last years, and it's getting worse. It's creating an environmental, business and social crisis on East Wight. What do you propose to do about this, and how will you hold Southern Water to account in the short term? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you open up the answers?
Yes, it's an environmental and it's a business and it's a social crisis, but it's also a health risk and it's a reputational risk for us. Many of us have to check on an app or check on a website to see where it's possible for us to swim. And everybody across the country can see those red crosses across the whole of East Wight, from Ryde all the way down to Ventnor. I have a friend who helps to run the charity The Wave Project in Sandown, where they take disadvantaged or children who have a mental or physical need into the water to go surfing. And some days they can't do that. They can't go in the water. And she actually went to see Bob Seeley and said, when these companies get fined, can't that money come to us, the charities, the businesses, in order for us to be able to be compensated for the fact that we can't run our business? He went, I thought it was a good idea. Regulation, sadly, has failed. Privatisation has failed. And it's not just water. It's our ferries, It's the rail, it's the energy industry. Privatisation is a failed experiment for basic infrastructure projects. We cannot leave the basic infrastructure of our nation in the hands of corporations, bandits and profiteers. So I would say we need to take it back into public ownership. And these companies are failing. Thames Water is in £18 billion of debt. They are bankrupt. We can do this. We need to stop trying to regulate them. We need to go and take them into public ownership and make sure we can have clean water ourselves.
So sewage and flooding is one of the biggest issues that are raised with me as an Isle of Wight councillor. It's one of the most frequent topics in an email that I get. And Southern Water have failed and are failing, and they've had huge fines for failing. The problem we have is we've got a very old Victorian sewage network, and it's a combined network where sewage, waste from your toilets, and rain runoff go into the drains and go into the same system. And it's the rainwater that causes the flooding of the sewage water. Our Victorian system, the Victorians knew what they were doing, is actually very good as long as it's only dealing with sewage from toilets. So there are two solutions. One is we replace the entire network with a dual system of runoff water, effectively clean rainwater, and sewage, which would plainly cost tens, hundreds of billions as a national programme. Or we do something about stopping that rainwater, floodwater, getting into the combined system. Now, Southern Water have got money to do this, and they've been spending some money on it, but it's been far too slow, and I'm worried, and I believe that PR is getting in the way of them delivering. So you'll have heard about the water butt scheme. That is a Southern Water scheme to stop water coming off your roofs and going into the combined system. The Isle of Wight Council can roll out plastic wheelie bins in a couple of months to the entire population of the island. We're now in year 2 of Southern Water's water butt scheme, and we've only done about 3 villages. They need to do it faster and quicker and stop using it as an ongoing annual good news story, because water butts alone is not enough. And if they can't get that done within months, then I think they have serious questions to answer. But it's about stopping that water runoff getting into the combined system.
I agree with some of our speakers, but I actually think we need a very strong carrot and stick approach, or stick and carrot approach. Yes, at senior level and the ownership, I'm in total, personally, in agreement with what Victor said. We do need of that, but we need to do things practically now, because we've got to make sure that our beaches are safe now and also for tourism. We do not want to put... So what I've been doing as a local council, and I've been campaigning on this issue for many years, is actually working with Surfers Against Sewage, a wonderful woman called Shani, who's and working with the Isle of Wight Council and Southern Water, because the actual staff of Southern Water are islanders, remember that, and they want to improve these things. And we're actually looking at programmes with parish and town councils to stop that surface water going in and increasing the flow of pumping from the pumping stations. I have a beach in my ward, Apley Beach, which is one of the most beautiful beaches, and that has a pumping station, and I've been working with them to actually get that flow back, which then will reduce the number. We need to have water retention schemes, and we've actually got funding from Southern Water in Ryde to actually, in the High Street, have the water coming through. So yes, we need to knock up there, But I, as an MP, want to, as a local councillor that I'm already doing, is look at practical things that actually stop poo going on our beaches now.
Emily.
We have a public health scandal with the amount of sewage that is being pumped into our rivers and the sea around the island. 3,865 incidents in the last year, over 38,000 hours of sewage being pumped in to our sea by Southern Water. And this is a public health situation that the Conservative government over the last 14 years has chosen to ignore, whilst water company bosses and the owners earn significant bonuses. The figures I quote are from a website called Poopers. I'm not sure I can say top poopers in the church, but anyhow, it is stark that we are in the situation that we are in, where we have a public health problem on this scale, and therefore we need tougher regulation, and that includes around the profits that companies are earning. It's about ensuring that they deploy flood barriers at places like Seamean Recreational Ground, that they deploy sluice gates at Benbridge to ensure that fresh water goes into the sea, that island roads sort out the clearing of surface water. Yes, we need development from the old Victorian drainage system that is mixing sewage and fresh water. We need to tackle that. But under the current system, it isn't working. Under the Conservatives, it isn't working. And therefore, Labour will take tough measures to ensure that water companies are properly regulated and that they clear up the sewage.
Thank you. Well, I think water companies are in a pretty unique situation, actually. Their product falls from the sky. All they've got to do is keep hold of it and then give it to us clean. That's all they've got to do. And they don't do that very well. I think there's a pretty obvious answer. We need to dig more holes and keep hold of it. Now, if we keep hold of it, it would stop running off and flooding places, and would also stop our hosepipe bans in the summer because it would just be there in the hole. Now, I know about the flooding, so I'm part of the Strand Area Residents Association, so I do know exactly what happened down Seamean there. And I contest that the Victorians did know what they were doing because they built the canoe lake as a flood defence. Great big hole in the ground. Funny that, isn't it? Right next to where Monkton Mead is, and the water used to run off into the canoe lake. But over the time, the council decided that it hadn't flooded for a while, so they put a pool in there. So then they built another great big hole next to it in the memorial garden, and then tried to hold water above ground by building a wall around the wreck and then doing gates in. Anyway, madness. I'm sure there's better ways of doing this. The company, I know in general reform are against regulation, and personally I kind of am too. And that's because regulation normally ends up in a fine, and that fine will inevitably end up on your bills. So you are all paying their fines through your water bills, and the CEO from Southern Water has now gone on to the ferries, so if we regulate the ferries and they get fined, guess what? Our bills might end up going up. Now, if that's okay, I personally think instead of the fines, perhaps they should actually be put in jail. Now, if the people making the decisions to pump poo into our waters that can make people seriously sick and possibly cause death, then perhaps they should actually have more of give them a criminal record and stick them in prison for a couple of days. But the fines, in my opinion, don't work.
David.
Well, again, in this, is that working, is it? Yeah. Mm-hmm. In this day and age, it's unacceptable, isn't it? We're back to Victorian times yet again. The water companies are just getting away with murder, aren't they? Well, actually, they are getting away with murder because death could occur from all sorts of diseases, from sewage going into the sea and rivers. I mean, as children in the 60s, we used to delight in going to the end of the sewage outfalls and watch it coming out. That was great fun, and if you were in a canoe, you could see it floating by. And we're back to those times, aren't we? It's just crazy. When we had Operation Sea Clean 24, 25 years ago, They told us our seawater was going to be the cleanest in Europe, and it was for a time, but then global warming has taken hold, and we've had this excessive rainfall that nobody could see was going to happen. And so we have to make plans, and the plans, I would say, would actually, yes, I would agree with renationalising the water companies, because that as a resource is our resource. It's not some company in France running the water companies, it's ours. And we should control that and make sure that they do clean up our seas and our rivers. So yes, I think I would support what the Green Party are saying, and I know I would go further as well. I would nationalise a lot of these utilities along with them. So yeah, bring it on.
Thank you, David. So the sixth question is from Alison Rowe, and I will read this for her. Many island residents are deeply worried about themselves or their loved ones becoming ill, not only about the possibility of being stuck in A&E for many hours, but also getting to and from the mainland for crucial appointments when faced with increasingly unreliable transport services. Can you give island residents any reassurance that things will improve? Joe.
Thank you. So I think there are probably two sort of parts to that, A&E, but also travelling for healthcare across to the mainland. And I'll deal with the second part of that question first, I think. So Michael and I both are Isle of Wight councillors, and we both sit on the Health Policy and Scrutiny Committee for the Isle of Wight Council. And what that means is we as a committee can hold healthcare decision makers to account. And at a meeting a few months ago, we discussed the issue of cross-island travel, because as we know, it's expensive, even with ferry subsidies for healthcare travel. It's expensive, it's unreliable, it is a hostile environment if you have a healthcare need. And while we were debating writing to Whitelink to ask them to bring their costs down and out them in public if they refuse to do so, surprise, surprise, I think probably before, Michael, you got to write the letter as chair, they decided to reduce their costs, fix their costs for healthcare travel. But none of this deals with the fact it is a very difficult way to go and access healthcare. And I think part of the problem is we're stuck in a national system which says you can have hospitals that specialise in different areas, in different parts of the county, and then people can travel to specialist hospitals. Well, it doesn't work when you're an island and you're quite a small county, and if you have to travel to a specialist hospital that happens not to be on the island, that is a really unpleasant thing to do compared to everywhere else across the UK. So I do think we need an island understanding of healthcare specialism, and we should be prepared to spend more money on St Mary's having to specialise in lots of things which might not make economic sense, but the island's population and their health needs come first. And I'm willing to make that case, even if it's against national policy.
Well, thank you, Joe, because I think you've summed up that why we need an Island Equality Act, which actually I've been campaigning for the last 8 years, and one thing as an MP I would pursue. Because did you know that in the last 12 months, your health services are now controlled in Hampshire? They've all moved, including public health, which is actually controlled by Hampshire. We have lost that. The committee that I chaired, which is the Policy and Scrutiny Committee, is the only body to bring the account of that. We haven't even now got places filled properly on some of those bodies that actually represent the island. I, as an MP, would want to make sure that we have that proper representation and that we have connectivity with all the different parts of the health service If you go over on Whitelings, you've got to get a ticket for a bus. You know, there is no connectivity, no of that. And we need to do that. And I've actually been working with particularly Hover Travel and the NHS to actually have that connectivity. It is something that we need to be doing ourselves in getting that right. And we need to get the governance of our health services back on the island.
Yes, I know personally, as a patient travelling from the island to a specialist health trust in London, Moorfields, which provides ophthalmology services, that it can be really tough. And if you're having a more serious illness like cancer, that's even tougher. And so yes, there is a need to get specialist care on the mainland, but that needs to be taken into account when scheduling appointments, for example, because it can take more than a day. You may need to spend overnight time, for example, in order to reach your appointment on time. You can't do that, you know, if it's in London before midday, then you can't get back because it's not a catamaran or hovercraft after 8:30 in the evening. And that's why we need a situation where we need tougher regulation. We need the ferry services to be reliable and affordable. And that's why Labour will refer the barriers in the market to the Competitions and Market Authority so we can stop the long-term problems that we've had, which have got particularly exacerbated over the last 14 years under the Conservatives. We need to address that. The NHS was founded under Labour and it will also be strengthened again going forward under Labour. Thank you.
So when I was younger, I fell through the floorboards going to work with my dad and had to go up to Ryde Hospital. So we can all remember that there used to be more than one hospital on the island. And I think that's where we've gone wrong. We've centralised everything and it all went to Newport. And then now, gradually, I've had people, whistleblowers, email me and get in touch with me. Gradually, all of the services will be being moved to the mainland. It's not good enough. I understand for some things we may need to travel, but over the last few years, nationally, we've lost 5,000 beds. Now, with an ageing population, never growing population, we need more beds, not less. It feels like it's being destroyed from the inside, purposefully, in my opinion. Now, we know that we've got enough money there because we've got record funding going into the NHS. The money is there. We've also got record waiting lists. Now, how on earth how does that work? But if you speak to the people that are actually doing the job in the hospitals, like the nurse earlier on, the money is being wasted. You've got people making decisions about throwing away a single use pair of scissors, whereas actually the nurses know they could buy a unit to clean those scissors with and reuse them. Now, there's all of that. I've said to her about saving £5 in every 100, which would end up being the 50 billion. She said easily you could probably save 25-30%. Overnight, she could do that. Now, they all know, if you ask the people actually doing the job, we could do it. Now, as for the travel, backwards and forwards, they're working as a monopoly. I know they said that they weren't, they are working as a monopoly. Now, I would push for regulation. I'm not sure if that's going to work, but that's what the wider user group want. Personally, I think we need to split the landing business from the ferry company business, and that would allow competition to come in. So a company like Blue Funnel that runs passenger ferries at the moment could buy a car ferry, and that it could end up being more reliable for everybody if it's an island-owned third company.
Yeah.
Well, it's all about centralisation, isn't it? St Mary's is now one of these huge, great big buildings that apparently is not fit for purpose because there's so many waiting lists, not enough beds. A&E is a complete nightmare. I was in there a couple of years ago with my wife and the waiting time was so long. And it's not their fault because the pressure is on. There's so many people going to an A&E and that's because the GPs aren't there, so they go to the A&E instead. But yes, a few years ago, we did have 2 hospitals on the island, and if you go even further back, we probably had 6 or 7 hospitals on the island. So why one hospital services an island like this It doesn't. And of course, yes, they are farming out treatments to the mainland, so we do have to use the cross-zoning services, and very expensive they are too. And they shouldn't be expensive, and we shouldn't have to use them, because we have a hospital and we need to reinvest in that hospital, and then that all goes back to the future government and what they do with the NHS. So I would like to see, obviously, yes, cutting down on waste. That's actually wrong. There are a lot of practices that need to be looked at, and again I go back to what I said earlier, it needs to be looked at bottom to the top. It needs a good old shake-up and make sure that A&E services aren't stretched and the hospital has plenty of beds and treatments for the island residents, and that's what I would be fighting for on your behalf.
The people who are working in our NHS are some of the most resilient and hard-working people that I know, and the fact that so many people are having to be cared for in corridors is a shame on our country. It's a shame on 14 years of the government. It's a shame on the fact that we have not stopped it from happening. It's a very, very big question here. And I don't have enough time to talk about what's happened to the fragmentation and the privatisation of our health service under the brand that we all trust, which is the NHS. Jo referred to writing a letter to Whitelink, and Whitelink had magically, before he even wrote the letter, had put a cap on the tickets for you to go to the NHS. That's because of a group that have been organising the Whitelink users group that many of you here will be members of on Facebook or the website, and they've been pushing and writing reports. They're medical reports. They put about cardiology, renology, neurology, radiotherapy, urology in Portsmouth. My stepdad had to go to Portsmouth for his prostate cancer operation. We are relying on that stretch of water. And people, I know people, like you were saying, whistleblowers, people are choosing not to go for treatment because of the cost and the unreliability of the transport. And that's horrendous, because nowhere else has to do that. It's only here on the island. The islands are silly. £5 for you to go into the mainland to be treated. Here, £40 minimum single fare. So I think it is an incredibly important thing that the MP should be doing, not just to try and fix the NHS, but to try and fix the privatised ferry systems that are holding us to ransom here on the island.
Thank you. So now we come to our final question, and Andrew is going to pose it. And to be fair, Andrew is the person that did most of the legwork to organise this evening. So thank you, Andrew.
According to Catholic social teaching, the only reason for politics is to promote the common good. How do you each understand the common good, and what will you do to promote it?
Michael.
Thank you for this very reflective question. I went to Bembridge School in the late 60s and 70s and was confirmed at the Holy Trinity in Bembridge. But I was brought up by parents. My father was a founder of Amnesty International, to actually care for others. So the common good was in my DNA. What I call my baby sister was from a refugee family who was brought in the middle of the night into my house. I was moved out of my bed, and actually it was natural. And all my working life was with mainly refugees, also veterans that had actually experienced war. We need to bring that common good philosophy back into our society much stronger. And I can assure you as an MP that I deeply believe in the common good.
Emily?
Yes, so for me, the common good comes with the spirit and the philosophy that underpins my socialism. It's about sharing. It's about solidarity, working together collaboratively, even across the political spectrum for the better of our local community here in Isle of Wight East. It's about those with the broader shoulders taking the heavy lift for those who are unable, who are perhaps disadvantaged or poorer or in much greater need. It's about those community values for me. It's about sharing and supporting each other for the common good. And I will bring those values to the role of your Member of Parliament if I should have the privilege to be elected and to serve you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so mine would be community. So throughout COVID, we had street parties and all that kind of stuff, and you started to know your neighbour's name again, and people that you didn't even know you'd lived next to for a few years. But as being part of having the post office, being part of that community, and that's what I feel, part of belonging, making sure that you look after each other, look after where you live, you speak the truth, you be kind, you be honest, you be brave, but just making sure that you're not looking out just for yourself, that you're looking out for everybody. And that I think we have kind of lost that. I've seen people wander past rubbish in the street and just leave it. I've seen people wander past someone's fallen over and they'll just leave it for somebody else to do. We all need to take a little bit more responsibility, and I think the world would be a better place. But that's my interpretation.
Yes, the common good. I think if I go back to where this all started for me, I've always been very passionate about the vendor community, and we're very lucky that we've got a very good community in the town, and we've got a very good business community in the town. And when we have a problem, I try to do my best to stand and do something about it. And that's what I do. That's why I led the tourism industry for 10 years and president of the Chamber of Commerce, because I believe in people's businesses and making sure that they've got all the tools there that they can use to enhance what they do. So if I'm a spokesperson for people, then I stand up there and I will do it. I'm not a keyboard warrior. I'm somebody who will go out there and do it for people. And, you know, for my community, when I hear stories about businesses suffering, you know, they shouldn't. And I want to do something for them. So that, I suppose that's what my common good is. I want to make people's lives better. And that's what I would do if I was elected a Member of Parliament for you.
And for the common good was actually the slogan for the Green Party when I joined it 10 years ago. And I've still got some of those posters that I used back in 2015 that say for the common good. And as it's been outlined, you know, what the common good is, it's our institutions, isn't it? It's the web of institutions as well that keeps our communities together. And by that I mean family, you know, marriage, all of those things that bring us together. What I think is more important for me to address is what is not the common good. And overconsumption is not the common good. Selfishness is not the common good. And in recent years, we have had appalling role models in Parliament when it comes to demonstrating what is not the common good. And I don't just mean parties, I mean lying and corruption and selfishness and people who are doing things, you look at them, why are you in Parliament? Why are you even there? All you're doing is voting for things for yourself, not for the common good. And I take that really seriously, and I think on the island we do. I think when we elect MPs here, or plural now, not been since 18 whatever, when we elect MPs, they are like our role model, aren't they? We feel that they reflect on us when they're in Westminster and they're talking and it says that they're representing Isle of Wight East. And so I would take that very seriously on my shoulders and feel that strength from people here to be that role model, to be able to demonstrate to people that not all politicians are liars, not all politicians are in it for themselves, that quite a lot of us, and increasingly if you get your vote, we're doing it for the common good.
Thank you. Well, I'm convinced that everyone who's standing is standing for the common good, and all candidates want that. We might have differing views about how to get there, but I think we're all standing to try and achieve it. I went to, my undergraduate degree was at University College London, and that was founded on the principles of Jeremy Bentham, who talked about the greatest benefit for the greatest number of people. And that's a good starting point, but it's not an end point, and it doesn't capture the nuances around that. It's not a passive thing, it's an active thing. So I want to help those who are less able to help themselves, and anyone standing for election who is in a position of authority, in a position of influence, should want to help those who are less able to help themselves first. The common good and the greatest benefit for the greatest number of people must also capture minorities, minority groups who may not form the majority, but nevertheless need the majority to understand and be prepared to stand up for everyone. So for me, the common good isn't just about numbers, it's about everyone, and I think the only thing we disagree on is how to get there, but I don't think we disagree on the fundamentals of it.
Thank you, Joe. So in a moment, I'm going to ask each of the candidates to give their closing remarks, and I'm going to go in the reverse order that we began our opening remarks. So I'm going to ask Vix to open and then Joe to close, going through. But I do want to thank the candidates on your behalf for making themselves vulnerable, for their passion for our island, and for their desire to serve us. So would you give them all a round of applause? I also want to say that my gavel is feeling very unused this evening, which is an amazing thing. Vix.
Is it 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Are you going to gavel us?
I will, absolutely.
Get the gavel. Thank you very much for allowing us to be able to come here and to be able to share such challenging questions. And in fact, as I said, what is not the common good? Those questions that we did not get to do the answer to today were all incredibly important questions. And if you feel that you would like to ask me those, if you didn't get your question called, please get in touch with me either after this event or later on. Because I believe that the next 5 years are going to be really critical for this country. I think it's a real opportunity that after the chaos, especially of the last few years, we can look forward with a new set of MPs, a large number of new MPs. I do fear, though, that the way in which when we see the polling, we're going to end up with, I don't want to quote a Conservative MP, but what Grant Shapps calls a supermajority, one party in an electoral system which I frankly disagree with, it's not proportional, one party which is going to dominate. And I think this is why we need to have a set of Green MPs that are going to push on those shared values, those values I shared with you today. So those are values of public ownership, they're values of social and environmental justice. These are really important values, and I know lots of you here and across the country share them. And there's very few places in the country where we have the third highest Green vote here. And here we do have that opportunity to be able to elect a Green MP. We do have that platform, and we do have somebody in me who's done this, spoken out. I do this at a national level. So I really hope that either today or in the coming weeks I can convince you that I'm ready to be the MP here for Isle of Wight East. Thank you.
There's a record amount of people standing in this election, and a record amount of independents, of which I'm proud to be one of them. Yes, it's all about the future. The country demands change, and only you have the power to make that change. Let's have a change from the old Conservative and Labour pendulum. We've been going down this route for several years. Has it got us anywhere? Not really. In fact, I think we've been going backwards in the last 14 years. I really do. And if I was elected as your MP, I would support the motions that would benefit the island, benefit change, make sure change comes, whether that's working with a Labour Party or a Conservative Party or a Green Party or maybe even Reform Party. You've got a good choice here, but as an independent, I can make that one person might be that one vote in the House that could make a difference for this island, and I will trade it. I will trade it for the island every time. So that's why I think you should vote for me. Thank you very much.
Okay, I agree that we have had passing the baton blue and red and blue and red. We desperately need change, and it's up to you who you feel aligns with your values, and that's where you want to put your eggs in the box. I can just say that I truly just want to make a difference. I wasn't going to vote for anybody. Reform offered me optimism. They don't moan about what's happened. They've just got good ideas on how to change it. We know that we can turn this country around really easily. If we had it tomorrow, it would be quick. Richard Tice, the businessman, he demands results straight away. All of the other candidates that I've met over the last few months, they're all like me. They're desperate for something different. We all just want to go in there and change it up. Make sure that they're listening to us, because they don't. They seem to be playing games with our lives. It doesn't affect them, but it does affect us. And I think we need ordinary voices in there. I'm not a polished politician, but I promise you I will always try my very hardest for the island. I absolutely love it. I want my kids to be able to come back here and have their children here so that I can dote on my grandchildren. But as it stands at the moment, it's really impossible. It's too expensive. It's too expensive to have children, to move in together. You can't buy property. All of these things are linked, and you can't tackle one without tackling the other. Now, you can't up taxes anymore. We've got record taxes, 70-year high of taxes. We can't do it. The only thing I haven't touched on is where else we get the money. So during COVID and the banking crisis, the Bank of England actually printed money and put it in quantitative easing into our system. At the moment, we're paying £35 billion a year, possibly up to 40 billion in interest on that. Now, that would stop. Bankers' bonuses need to go. So that's part of it. We've got the waste, and then we've got the net zero stuff. So it's 50 billion and 35 billion respectively. We know that we can change these things really quickly. You've just got to have the will to do it. I've got the will.
If you agree with Grant Shapps, the Tory Defence Secretary, and Vic Lothian from the Green Party, then about a Labour government coming into office, then I am best placed to influence that government from within. If you're one of the few, not the many, to think that the Conservatives will form the government, I would say Joe is probably best placed to influence that government. But I put it to you to look at the data. Best of Britain today have said that tactically, if you're progressive, if you're liberal or green, then Labour is best placed to defeat the Conservatives. It's very close here in Isle of Wight East, and that's what Best of Britain are saying. And therefore, if you want to change from the chaos and decline of the last 14 years to a Labour government, a Labour MP locally, that is about responsibility, about prosperity, economic growth, then that is important for you to consider. Every vote will count. It is very close between Labour and the Conservatives locally. And therefore your vote, your friends, your family vote is vital. The decision is yours. If I have the privilege to be elected as your Member of Parliament, I will every day seek your trust and seek to engage with you. It will be a privilege, and I will serve you. Thank you.
The average wage on the island is £75 less than that on the mainland. We need an Island Equality Act that actually helps us when a brick goes across that site, the Solent is double the cost, and we've actually got to get a quality of that. Over the years, it's only been a Liberal local councillor that's got a track record and experience and is already doing it. I was the mayor of Ryde and helped brought in 40 million of investment by getting Ryde Town Council into a structure to do that. And I could do that right across the constituency. Remember Stephen Ross and Peter Brand, who was a GP in this community? They were good, honest, local men who actually represented you. And we need, in this any more than now, with this particular failed government, a representative that is from the core community that is standing up for you.
Well, thank you, Stephen, to the organisers for putting on this fantastic hustings. And I think of the four we've done so far, it's been the most wide-ranging in terms of the topics. And it's fantastic that quite a big church has been absolutely packed out. And I think it shows on the island we really care about issues and we turn out to listen and share views. So it's been fantastic. Thank you. At this election, like any other, you're being asked two questions, but you've only got one vote. And the two questions you're being asked is, who do you want to get the keys of number 10? And who do you want as your local MP? And like in any other year, you might find the answer to those two questions are hard to answer with a single cross in a single box. If we believe the polls, we're told the election's already won nationally. I have no idea whether that's true. But I would urge you to take the opportunity to vote locally this time and decide which of us in front of you would make the best MP for you and your neighbours and our corner of this island. And whoever gets the keys to number 10, I will deal with honestly and robustly on behalf of you. It doesn't matter whether it's a Conservative government, it doesn't matter whether it's a Labour government. Most funding decisions get made by the civil service anyway. I hope I have convinced you that I would make your most passionate, robust, experienced representative for the next 4 to 5 years, and I hope beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, everybody. It's 20:59, so we have 1 minute left. May I thank you all for coming. May I thank you for the questions you've submitted. But most of all, may I thank you for the deep respect that you've shown the candidates in your careful listening. So I pray that God's Spirit might give you wisdom in your discernment. And I pray that God might bless our chosen candidates, that they might serve his people on this island for the common good. There is tea and coffee it's in the hall over there, is that right, Joe? Over there. I'm sure the candidates will be staying. So if you asked a question and you didn't get a chance and you see one of the candidates free, do pigeonhole them and ask the question. Thank you so much for coming.